viewers. Today we are going to have an explicit view on the Gambian Dalasi depreciation amid persistent trade deficit and import dependency. One of well-respected and renowned Gambian experts on economic management, governance and accountability, a former member of the African Development Bank Economics, where he contributed research and policy analysis, will enlighten us on this issue.
The source of all of the problems when it comes to exchange rate depreciation, Gambia's Dalasi falling in value relative to other currencies, it's all internal. So first of all, you have to understand what causes, what determines, what are the things that control an exchange rate, like that has an effect on interest rate, exchange rate going up or down. In other words, the value of the Dalasi appreciating or depreciating. There are many factors. It's difficult to go through all of them, but let me focus on the key factors in the Gambian context. The first and foremost is what is called the trade deficit. That is, how much is this country exporting versus how much is it importing. What we export is very small relative to what we import. We export, the total value of our export is like roughly $300 million. The total value of our imports is approaching $1 billion. So the difference between our imports and exports is a huge number. Right now it's approaching somewhere close to $700 million US. That is the trade deficit. In other words, that deficit is, currently that value is the highest it has ever been since Gambia was founded. What it means is that Gambia is producing very little, and everything that we basically, our economy depends on virtually everything. Consumer goods, so major capital goods, we import it. We import. The reason why that is, that has a negative effect on your exchange rate, because as you import more and export very little, it means the demand, when you export more, there'll be more demand for your currency. When you are selling your goods, people want your currency to buy your items. When you are importing, you need to sell your currency to buy more foreign currency. So this is why the more you import, the lower the value of your currency. Basically, trade deficit means you are importing too much and exporting little. See, before we used to have a lot of exports of groundnut, but now our groundnut production has fallen by more than 50%. We don't export as much, but we increasingly import everything. Before, the percentage of rice we used to import, was smaller. Now, 90% of the rice that we consume is imported. So we are an import-based economy. You hear that a lot about Gambian economy, and that's not a good thing, because an import-based economy is a country that imports a lot and exports very few. You have a trade deficit. When you have that, there'll always be a constant pressure on your currency. Look at everything here. The rice we consume, the sugar we consume, oil, whatever. When you go to the market, all the food items, consumer goods, clothing, everything we consume comes from outside. So this is the problem. So trade deficit, just understand it basically as a country importing too much and exporting very little. This is one of the main factors why our currency constantly depreciates.
Viewers, we have come to the end of today's episode, and we will look forward to the next one, where we will discuss more on this burning issue regarding the Dalasi depreciation. Thank you for watching The Voice Online TV.